Hey, how you doing? This is John, and welcome to John's Long Box. I'm just showing off the physical proofs of my comics. Thank God I got them because I saw a couple of mistakes that I didn't notice when I got the digital, and they're being printed. So there we go. I'm hoping to get them, I don't know, next week.
That's great.
Yeah. So it's clobbering time. That's when grown adults spend their Friday nights not out drinking, picking up chicks, or doing whatever it is the young kids do. We grown men sit around at their computer in front of computers, nerd game stuff, Star Trek and whatever, and talk about fictional characters beating each other up. You know, Spider-Man, Batman, Captain America. But I figured since yesterday was Halloween, this week we do werewolves versus vampires. And James, you got a little bit of an edge on this one, right? This is your purview.
Yes, it is. As everybody knows, I am a horror author and artist, and this is one of my books here. This is one of mine. This has been in print for a couple of years now. It has sold, this book alone in formats has sold over 35,000 copies.
That particular book, you sold that particular book to 35,000 people, came back? Is it 30?
Yeah, 35,000.
on it?
35,000. No, this is not a comic. This is a novel.
I know.
My comic comes out. It's coming out soon. But yes, I have some history with horror. I am the distant cousin of the late actor Christopher Lee, so horror's been in my family for a long time. Wow. And as a horror author, you know, I have extensive fun with vampires and werewolves and undead. So that's where I come from.
What is the Steins about? Just give us a little.
Okay. The novels are about a young girl. Her name is Mary Jade Von Stein. Her parents are brutally murdered, and because of her age and age, she's forced to go live with her relatives in Europe. Only problem is her relatives are vampires, werewolves, living undead, and when she gets over there, she has to try to survive living with them, while the people that killed her parents want her dead. And that's all in the first book.
Is it what is the age range for this book?
I would say 14, 15 years old.
Okay.
I mean, yes, people do die in the book, but I mean, there's nothing sexually explicit or anything like that in the book.
Just violence.
Yeah, it's just violence.
We're Americans. We can deal with violence.
Yeah.
And Fabrizio over here, you got a comic, right?
I do, but I'm not related to anybody in the horror genre. I don't I feel very unprepared for this.
You're third cousins with Nicolas Cage.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I have a comic book, Horace H. Hoover. It is there's elements of horror, at least the superficial trappings of horror. It's not a horror comic book though. I like to use the visual aspect of it sometimes. Yeah, and I'm Team Vampire tonight. So.
Oh, he's jumping right to the fight. You're breaking protocol there.
Sorry.
You're breaking protocol. Yeah, that's right.
So, for those of you who don't know, I love the comic Horace H. Hoover. It's been 3 issues that come out. When's your 4th issue coming out?
Maybe the end of the year. I guess this is new. This is on Amazon. It's a collected 1 through 3. So.
Yeah, I love it.
I remember those.
I'm fond of Horace H. Hoover. I might be more fond of Fabrizio watching him ink on Sundays. It's all right.
Thank you.
It's funny because Fabrizio does like an hour of inking on Sundays, and my wife is like, "Oh, it's the relaxing."
It is so often to watch a brush inker. I try to be a brush inker. You, Gary Martin, Andy Smith. I think they're the only ones left. Everybody's using microns or brush pens, and I'm like,
yeah.
And then when I watch it, I know you could ink stuff. I've inked with a brush pen and pens, and I say to myself, but that's not inking. That's not inking. He's got to put a brush on it and a nib and a dip pen too. That's it. That's inking.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm joking.
Yeah, it is. Maybe I am kind of like the inking, the Bob Ross of inking. It is pretty relaxed.
It's very relaxing.
You draw like a tentacle with blood on it. You're like,
I'm watching football and watching Fabrizio at the same time. He's so calm.
Man,
Really
I can just see
taking
somebody
this bicycle, and he
looking
just
like
like,
Bob
my
Ross.
wife and I went antiquing this week, and we picked up a nice tea set and everything. Meanwhile, there's a
I can imagine the voice of Bob Ross inking, and we just slightly twist the brush as we move slowly down the line. Something like that. I can just hear that. Yes, I've watched a lot of Bob Ross when I was younger, so yes, and I do. I love watching how he does things. He's
I
fantastic.
had a very good friend who taught Bob Ross classes when I was headed an art class in an art studio, and
he
they had
taught Bob Ross how to paint.
for weeks and weeks.
No.
And it's pretty amazing. Everybody comes out with a painting that's painted pretty well, pretty close. God bless him.
I remember Bob Ross talking about how he taught how people went to classes to learn how to paint, and then they would go out supporting him. Yeah, I remember that.
I remember
that made a lot of money.
College, me and my roommates, we would be doing, too much information, I guess, but we'd be doing bong hits, and then watching Bob Ross oh my God, he just messed up. Oh my God. And then it's just a tree and it's a rock.
A happy accident.
How did he do it? We would record it, watch it. I don't know. That was just a blob of paint, and now it's a mountain landscape.
The whole trick was that his canvas was always wet.
Really?
Well,
the canvas that he painted on was wet.
He had his own special fast drying oil paint.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, the way he
if I wet my canvas, I could.
It's a wet on wet.
And then when he had his son on, those, if you get to watch those 2 episodes where he has his son on it, he rags on his son so much. It's like, yeah, the only reason he paints is so he needs to make money. So he's really lazy. He just paints when he needs to make money. And I'm like, oh my God. And he's doing this on television.
Right.
I was like, man, you are just evil.
Well, he was a drill sergeant. He
said
he
was in the Air Force.
Wow.
Yeah. And he said that he was angry. He had anger problems and he just painted to, so I don't know. And he hated his haircut, but it became his signature.
But it was so easy for him to get in makeup. That was the thing.
So anyway, yesterday was Halloween. First most important question: did you guys get trick-or-treaters?
No,
I was at work.
I was in a hotel anyway.
Did Fabrizio, you were home? You didn't get any?
No.
And you live next to a cemetery. I figured you'd have perfect Halloween.
Yeah, I don't. Maybe the cemetery scares kids away. I don't know.
Well, it's funny that you said that because we got candy. We left the door open. We had the light on, so you could see us walking around in the kitchen. If you look down, you could see us in the kitchen, and people just walked right by our house. We watched them go to our neighbor's house, bypass our house, and go to and then my wife just goes, "Do we have the creepy house?" So I don't know. I got a lot of candy, and we probably had 4 or 5 trick-or-treaters.
John, you had to wear clothes when you were in the kitchen.
I was dressed as Adam.
I will say the best video I saw was the guy dressed up as the Count from Sesame Street.
The Count from what?
He was dressed up as the Count from Sesame Street. The one. Yeah. But it was the right size. He was all in black, but he had him in front, and so he had to give candy out to the kids and counted there like that. It was really cool.
Man, it was cute. We got a couple of kids, and I live out in the suburbs, so they were all polite. The few kids that came, I had the bowl of candy, and they're all taking one thing. I'm like, guys, grab a handful. And they're like, oh, really? Really? And they're like, thank you, sir. And then one of the kids, he was dressed as Mario. He was like a little peanut. He just goes, have a spooky day. So, his father must have coached him. So I love Halloween, but I remember as a kid, everywhere you look, there was kids everywhere. I also remember, yesterday was hot.
Yeah, there's very few children in my neighborhood. Most are the teenagers have grown up, gone to college and stuff in my neighborhood. So there's not that many kids. I think we only got 3 or 4.
Because for 15 years I lived in a 3-story walk-up in Flushing, and we got none because nobody.
Yeah, we don't get it either.
So, and then my first year I was all excited. We had a whole bunch of kids. My second year I dressed up in costume and nobody came. So this was my third year in this house.
Yeah, where I'm at, when I bought the house, everybody in the neighborhood had little kids. I've been in the house 21 years, so they're all gone now.
The neighborhood
you watch the whole neighborhood grow up, and that's the thing is they're all growing up. They're all going to high school. They're all graduating high school. They're all going to college.
Yeah. I mean, I remember growing up, we would walk far to other neighborhoods, places that we didn't even frequent to get candy. But
did you use a pillowcase?
yeah,
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
gather up all together and they all go to one neighborhood and they have parties now.
Yeah.
It's not, they do that stuff, and they do get. Then when we were in our house here in North Carolina, there were plenty of trick or treaters. All the kids went around. But here in an apartment, I don't get anything anymore. And I love, this is my time of year. My birthday's 3 days before.
Yeah.
2 days before.
I love Halloween. I love this time of year.
Except I'm really old now.
I like I said, I remember as a kid. Did you guys dress up? Like I used to love dressing up.
Oh yeah. I mean,
You used to get those. What are those costumes? Ben, what is it? Ben, I had that famous
we used to get
Halloween costume. I have to look it up.
With
See,
the
when I was
plastic
little,
vest
Star
and the
Wars had
rubber
just
band that
come
broke
out.
instantly.
oh,
See, when I was kids, you either did superheroes or you did Star Wars.
Ben Cooper. We're old enough to get the Ben Cooper costumes.
Is that what I'm talking about? The plastic
Batman.
mask?
That's with the plastic mask.
Yeah, we had those.
Had the little slit
Yeah,
for your mouth, and you
yeah.
go like this all day long.
Yeah, and you end up putting it up on your head because you can't breathe.
Yeah, and you'd
You
hurt your
couldn't
tongue.
see either.
You're like, oh
Yeah.
man. And then you got a Hulk costume, and it said Hulk, and it had Hulk's face on your chest, and you're like,
Yep.
Hulk doesn't look like this.
Yeah, well, there's different costumes now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I remember one of my friends one year said, it's Halloween. You dress up as something scary or you don't dress up at all. And that always like stuck with me. So ever since then, so at 14, not 14, I'd say like 9 or so.
See, 14, 15 years old when I was a kid, we had met some of the guys that had worked at Hammer Films. So we were going home making our own stuff. We started making our own stuff. And we had some really fun stuff. The only thing we couldn't do was if we did a werewolf, we couldn't get the jaws to work. They were just stuck. You got basically what we did. We went down to the pet store and bought muzzles, and then we decorated the muzzles. That was the only way you could do it back then. We were cheap. We only spent like $50 on the stuff.
That's pretty good. I remember one year I did a mummy costume out of toilet paper. I think it took me about 3 hours to make the costume, and I think it lasted about 9 minutes before I shredded it apart. So, hi, Yang. How you doing?
Not too bad. Thanks for having me.
Your Kickstarter just closed up.
It did. It's supposed to be continuing.
Okay.
But
Stop looking for the link.
yeah, but for some reason it didn't. Kickstarter now has like an in-demand feature.
Oh, good.
For some reason it didn't turn on, so I'm arguing with them about getting it going.
Oh yeah, they have it in demand now. They were talking about it. Billy Tucci was talking about it on the stream.
Yeah.
Oh, I got to address a super chat that I just noticed. RRTNZ says, can't join today. One for the vampire wins every time. But if werewolves get smart and work together, vampires lair, team werewolf. So
okay, good night, everybody.
Go.
He broke protocol, but he paid for the privilege. So
Go read my book. You'll find out exactly the difference between werewolves and vampires. I guarantee you.
All right, so we were just talking. Yang, you said you had one kid, one trick or treater.
Yeah, just one. But the street I'm on is sort of in between two housing developments, so our yards are much larger. So if you're a kid with any smarts, you're going to go into housing developments so you can hit more houses.
Right. Yeah. And what year did you stop trick or treating? How old were you when you stopped?
I think I was
16 years old, and I had just like an old man mask and a hoodie, and I knocked on this old grouchy guy's door, and he just said, "You're too old for this. You're a beggar." And that was I got shamed, and I never trick or treated again.
He probably thought you were going to mug him.
Ours got to the point of everybody wanted to know what we were making.
What's that, Dave? James?
I said ours got to the point of everybody wanted to know what we were making. So there was no trick or treating. Everybody just came by. We wanted to see what you guys are making this year. So I mean, it went from trick or treating to what new devices are you making for Halloween? Because because like I said, when we started doing the werewolves and stuff for Halloween, everybody started going like, "Oh, we got to go over and see this." So everybody would come over to the house instead of us going over to their houses. They'd be like, "Okay, what's this year's going to be?" So we stopped. I think I was 16 when we stopped.
I remember there was one house on the block. Every year they would turn their house into a haunted house, and they would just like have us tour their house, and like they would have like the clothesline with the ghost and the lights. They did that like 3 years, but I don't know what happened to them. The Pattersons, I remember them. That was their name. So Oscar wants to know, what mythology we talk about? Is it comic related? So is Werewolf by Night, or are we talking Dracula? That's just it. When we're talking werewolves and vampires, this is folklore, mythology, legends, whatever word you want to use. So there's like a million different versions.
If you haven't got this comic book, I highly recommend it.
What's that, Crimson?
Crimson.
Okay.
There's 24 episodes and a special. It's really good. Fantastic.
So does anybody want to pick a monster, werewolves or vampires, and tell us a little bit? What do you want to start with? You want to start? Fabrizio, you've been quiet. Anything you want to start with?
So I'm going to start with vampires, and I do agree.
We're not talking about who's winning first. We're just going to talk about vampires in general now.
And that's the thing. There's so many variations and iterations of vampires that, do we just stick with Dracula? I think that's pretty limited if you just stick with Dracula. I don't see any reason why you can't like take popular takes from movies or comics or books, and so I think werewolves have less like iterations. I could be wrong about that, but it seems like vampires there's a wide array, and werewolves seem to be, they turn into a large, powerful, scary monster when the moon comes out, and that's pretty much it. But I could be wrong about that.
So one of the things I always try to do every week is like we try to like get rid of the statistical anomalies. Like, we all know that Spider-Man was, Captain Universe for an issue or two. When we're talking Spider-Man versus Batman, we don't include that version of Spider-Man. We're talking about the typical. And then there was, I'm sure, I can't even think of it, there was a story too where Spider-Man was crazed by a virus and turned into a spider. We don't include that. We're talking about the typical version. So what would you say would be the tip? Like, what is the commonality between all vampires? Anybody want to start with this?
I'll pin on this one.
James, this is your book, right?
Your typical vampire is going to be undead.
What does undead mean?
That means that means they've died and they're still moving around.
Okay.
So they're living undead. Number two, they have to have warm humanoid blood to sustain themselves and stay alive.
Okay.
They have immunities to pretty much everything illness wise, like natural illnesses and stuff. They're immune to that. They have a high susceptibility to sunlight, and depending on which lawyer you go to, silver can affect them. Holy items such as crosses, crucifixes, and stuff can affect them. The only way when you go further back, the only way that you can kill a vampire is destroy the heart, cut their head off.
Right.
Anybody
have any disagreements or anything to add about vampires?
No. I think those, as far as common elements, that goes across every version, I would say. Like
when we talk about like zombies, for they're undead or whatever, and like I think we all think about The Walking Dead more than anything else. But then they redid, I can't think of his name. Scott Snyder introduced the fast zombies, and I just rejected that because it's like if they're fast, they're not zombies. Like, you know what I mean? So like when I see vampires out and about in the daylight, to me that like breaks the rules. But Dracula was out and about in the daylight, and that's like the original vampire. So what do you guys think about that?
That's why it says susceptibility. It depends on the vampire.
And sparkle in the light. Well, I think we could all just universally agree that we're not talking about Twilight. Anybody talking about Twilight? Marcus, put your hand down.
I'm not talking about Twilight.
Twilight, yes, that's the modern vampire we should talk about.
But
you really
vampire. That's the Anne Rice vampire too.
When you look at the books,
that's true.
If you look at legends, vampires could move around in a little bit in sunlight. It depended on how old they were, how powerful they were, and stuff like that, because how long they could stay in sunlight. That's why I said susceptibility. I didn't say it. I just
Because
said
I remember that, like,
You
you know,
can't-
vampires, you know, you always see those cool Christopher Lee just bursting into flames and everything. But
oh,
then
yeah.
but then you read Dracula, and Dracula was out in the daylight, and
you can't see their image in a mirror.
Yeah,
right.
that's the other thing. Yeah, you can't do it.
Yeah.
Do you know why?
They don't have a soul.
Oh, they don't have a soul, but because the original mirrors were made of silvered glass, and it was part of their susceptibility to silver.
Yep.
You know, and then that
Makes
expanded
sense.
into
I
photographs.
like not having a soul answer better.
Well, I mean, the way I do it in my books is real simple. Vampires are a lot fewer than werewolves.
A fewer.
There's a lot fewer. That means like there's like 1 to every 1,000 werewolves. They're rare. Vampires are extremely rare. In my book, they're extremely rare. There's like in all of Europe, there's only about 5 or 6. That's it, and they stay hidden. And then you have my werewolves. They are done a whole lot. I do my werewolves differently. I do my werewolves that I follow. There's a Greek mythology that Hades and Persephone, one of their children, was cursed and became the first werewolf, and any of his descendants are werewolves. That means they're born as werewolves. And if you're made a werewolf, is because they tried to kill you and you survived. If you survived, you're cursed with it until the packs come and get you. They do not lose their mentality. They work as pack animals. They hunt just like a wolf pack does. They have a alpha male, alpha female.
We're still doing vampires.
I'm just saying. I'm just giving you the difference between the two. So that's the way I do it. And my vampires are stronger. My vampires are a lot stronger because they're rarer. And that's the way I do it with my vampires. My vampires are made differently than werewolves. There's no relationship to them or anything.
So I'm just looking down this list. So Dracula is a bit of a boss vampire. So can we all agree that like Dracula would be at a different level of?
Oh yeah, Dracula. Even in my books, there's 2 vampires that are above all of them, and one of them is Dracula.
In the video game parlance, he would be the boss. It says it right there. Yeah. So
he would be the, if you're playing a online game, he would be the event boss of the game.
And then the Anne Rice. Did anybody read the Anne Rice books?
Yeah, I've got Anne Rice books.
The first one.
Are you caught up with them? Did you read? No, you didn't read them.
No, I read the first book. I wasn't a fan of that version.
And stuff like that. It's just you feel like they're like, oh, we're cursed, okay, whatever, and they're trying. I mean, it wasn't that. They're good books. Don't get me wrong. They're good books. I'm not going to knock her, and may she rest in peace. The way she's got the vampires lined up is an older one changes the next one.
Right. I read them all. I'm all
grooming
caught up.
situation.
I read all the Anne Rice books. Because I'm an obsessive person. Like if I start something, I gotta finish it. I even read Prince Lestat in the Kingdom of Atlantis, which I was like cursing as I was reading that book. Spoiler alert: space aliens. So replimons. For like 3.
That's how The Walking Dead got made.
3 months I've been saying replimons. It's the worst science. It became like bad science fiction. I don't know what happened. But anyway,
you do know that, right? The pitch for Walking Dead to Jim Valiant was space aliens versus zombies.
Oh.
And then when they got in 12 books, Jim was like, when are the space aliens coming in? Jim, yeah, I lied. Kid you not, that's exactly what happened.
Oh, Midnight Mass is supposed to be really good. I got to check out Midnight Mass. I have Rune. I haven't read it yet. Oscar knows his comics. Oscar knows his comics.
I'm gonna throw another one.
It's only like 20 years old, 30 years old. I mean,
you need to check out
a while ago, John.
Manga and anime of Hellsing.
Yeah, I heard that was good. I barely read any manga. So and why about
Rice?
What the hell's happened to my brain?
But anyway, Rand's vampires are way better.
Ayn Rand's vampires. They do not like it when you're on welfare. They do not like it when. But Anne Rice's vampires, there's a lot of it that I did like. Like to me, I think she codified a lot of, like because I played a lot of that Vampire the Masquerade role-playing games. I'm sure, Yang, you know what I'm talking about.
Sure.
And they had like the sire feeds the blood. Because before that, it was always like, you got bit by a vampire, you turned into a vampire. And even as a kid, I'm like, well, wouldn't the whole world be filled with vampires?
But see, that's the thing about Dracula. If you read the original Dracula, he turned, the blood was used.
Right. So they have this like blood ritual of like,
there's a blood ritual,
yeah, and it was like a long, slow process, which and strenuous, and then like Dracula kind of decided who he was going to turn into a vampire, and that's the problem with the Anne Rice vampires is like they became so familiar after over 20 years of these books that all of these characters, Lestat, they weren't monsters anymore. They were just like they were almost Tolkien elves. They were just like the whole like monstrous aspect of like feeding on human beings became just like, I'm going to go out and eat. And then they'd come back and then it was just like, but my feelings for you. It was like a romance novel, and they didn't even address the horror aspect of it, so it became less and less about vampires. And then
it's chicklet.
What's that?
It's chicklet. Women are interested in like the dangerous bad boy. So that's what happened to a lot of the vampires. That's Twilight right there. Women are sort of into this. It's like the kind of the perception of maybe there's danger without actually being danger. That's what happened to a lot of vampires. I think that and the technological impositions of having UV lights be what hurts them.
Okay, on Carmilla. Now, Carmilla predates Dracula.
Yeah,
the book Carmilla does predate Dracula.
Yeah, and Varney the Vampire too. That's one of the things I got into is getting all the original horror novels and everything. Well,
the thing about Carmilla, if you get the Irish Tale, which is the one that predates Dracula, it is actually the first. And I hate to tell you this, but it's the first lesbian story ever told.
Yeah, pretty.
She's after a girl.
Yeah,
that's the truth.
I read Carmilla, and I was like, "Is this a real book?" Like, you know how sometimes you read a book and then you pretend it's really old. Like The King in Yellow, is that really old, or is that like we pretend it's old?
No, it's really old.
1890s.
So I was like, because the edition I got had like sexy lesbians on the cover and everything like that, So I was like, are we pretending this is an old book? But it is an old book, right? Because I know for a fact Varney the Vampire is old. But
Carmilla is real old. I mean, it's really old. It's like, what was it, 1860s?
Yeah, that was written by
I guess that's an Irish guy that wrote it.
He was Varney the Vampire was written by you remember that? Did you ever see that movie Gothic with Mary Shelley and Lord Byron?
Where they're all sitting around the table.
Right, that guy is the guy who wrote. Yeah, he's the one that wrote Varney. So that like all of the Gothic.
That's going to be around 18. That'll be around 1830.
Yeah. So I think that's like considered the first. But anyway. So the thing about vampire, and then the next important thing about vampires was Del Toro. Guillermo? I can never say his name.
Guillermo del Toro.
Guillermo.
Yeah, he just was like, I think it was like at the beginning of Twilight. He was just like, vampires are monsters. They're supposed to be scary, and then he made the Strand, and then I started thinking I was making up like a comic book about vampires. So if I ever get to my vampires, they're going to be horrifying. Vampires are supposed to be horrible, scary monsters. So anyway, let's like, what is your favorite like flavor of vampire? That we got vampires from Roman times. We got like Celtic vampires. We got all these. Does anybody have like a particular folklore or tradition of vampire? And if
I go by the European version. That's where I get my information from. That's where and Greek and stuff like that I mixed in with mine.
And Yang, you play Dungeons and Dragons. Do you remember and I know I'm going to murder this, but the Portuguese vampire, the Penganalian. It was
not sure.
You don't know what I'm talking about? It was a female vampire. And during the full moon, the head just pulls out of the body and pulls. And it uses the hair to like a bat.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I can't think of
I know I'm murdering the team. and then it kills people, and then it has to soak all the guts in vinegar so that they shrink, so they can crawl back into the body. It is the most horribly disgusting. It's only in the Fiend Folio, second edition of Dungeons and Dragons. But I think
don't have that. I got Monsters. I've got Monsters edition. I got Artifacts. I've got the Masters and the
you
Players.
got to get the Fiend Folio. It's chock full of crazy. But I had to look it up. It's an actual type. Like there's the Lamia, which is like the old Roman version of a vampire.
Yeah, I do have the Rifts Vampire Kingdom, which is a really good book.
Okay, I just saw a comment, but yeah, Kamala is before Dracula. Hannibal King is isn't he the vampire hunter in a Tomb of Dracula before Blade?
Yeah, he is.
And then Blade, we got to address Blade because that I thought Marvel Comics made it up, but there's actual tradition of daywalkers of.
Yeah, they've been around. They've been around.
Yeah, I really thought people made it up.
And then you also have, you also have all of the books of Vampire Hunter D.
Yep.
I mean, there's over 30 books. There's over 30 volumes of that story.
Zach Ted, what are the Filipino vampires? I'm sure they got some horrible story. But I took a sociology class in college, and we actually spent like a week talking about vampires. And they said that the commonality between all vampires is that they're backwards of normal humanity. Normal humans, pre-industrial, we came out in the daylight. At nighttime, we went to bed. We woke up at the crack of dawn.
Yeah.
Vampires wake up at night. We feed on animals. They feed on us. They sleep up. They sleep in a coffin. We sleep in a bed. Everything that humanity does, they would do the opposite. They can't die. They are already dead, and that was where the fear came from vampires. And it seems like every culture has a vampire story. So probably my favorite vampire.
Dark Shadows, yes.
Dark Shadows.
Dark Shadows. That was great.
That was great.
We tried. And because I'm a pain in the neck, I had to go with the very first episodes. So I started with.
Well, it's hard to watch the first episodes of Werewolves.
That first season, oh man!
Hold on, I gotta watch the first episode of Days of Our Lives. It's been on 75 years.
Yes, I know. Like when I got into Doctor Who, I started with the first Doctor, the first episode. I got to admit, some of them were chore, but they were charming enough to keep me going. I think I got 4 episodes into the first 4 episodes of the first seasons of Dark Shadows. I'm like, I can't.
I'm the same way when it comes to a comic book or it comes to a manga or something like that or an anime. If I'm going to get into it, I got to go get the first one. I have to go get the first one.
Yep. If I remember, we're talking about. I'm just going to say the Portuguese vampires because I can't remember. I can't pronounce their names. Let's see. There was another comment that I wanted to pick, but anyway. So vampires are basically an inversion of like all that's good. They're repelled by holy objects. We're talking medieval times when holy items were supposed to protect us and everything like that. Another big changing point for the way I thought about vampires was J.M. DeMatteis wrote a graphic novel for Marvel Comics called Greenberg the Vampire. Marcus, I know you read it, right?
Yeah, I have it. I don't remember it that well.
Which one was it?
Greenberg the Vampire.
Graphic novels I have, some of them.
But one of the things that struck me about it was a vampire in a Hasidic Jewish community. And they repelled it with Stars of David. And I was like, but and then it was like, oh, it's the faith in a higher power.
I've seen that in other places.
So,
yeah, I've seen that in other movies too.
Yeah,
I think they used that in the X-Men.
Yeah,
the Star of David, Kitty Pryde, Star of David, drove away Dracula.
Yeah, that's what.
That episode that he was going, he had gotten Storm. Yeah, exactly.
He got Storm in the annual, and then they had the comic too.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I mean, what would be the reasoning for that though?
What?
Like that doesn't. Any religious artifact seems a little odd to me.
Well, not so much the religious artifact. Like if an atheist is going to pick up a cross, it ain't going to do anything. Like it has to be a focus for your faith.
James made it Jewish. I mean, it's the writer.
Christianity came out of Judaism, so I can see where it worked.
Like if I picked up like a Tom Cruise movie and I really believed in Scientology,
it would work.
You need Battlefield
No, it
Earth.
has to be it has to be the L. Ron Hubbard size.
Yeah, you
Okay.
need L. Ron Hubbard stuff. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. What would be the holy
That's
item?
kind of interesting.
You know what the holy symbol for Scientology is, right?
Money.
Middle finger.
No, it's a cross crossed out. You take a cross and then you put an X over the cross.
Oh.
They
Well,
call
wait a
it
minute. No, that's not right because there's
I don't know about-
Orthodox
I
that
don't know
use
about- I
that
don't know
as a
that.
cross.
no, not the Cairo. That's different. It's literally a cross with an X through it because what's his name? L. Ron Hubbard actually it was supposed to be a replacement for Christianity, and then later on they kind of changed. They retroactively changed it to it's something else. It's a nautical symbol. No, it's not. No, it's
No,
not.
I don't.
You
I
can
don't
actually
worry,
see it writing
I,
where he says it
I
was.
don't worry too much about.
What if you're in a
Scientology.
Neptune society?
Oh, you're talking to a guy who used to go to Scientology centers and argue until I got banned from every Scientology center. From Queens.
That's it. I'm done. That's the ultimate.
Fabrizio, I told you that story. How before I met my wife, that was one of my hobbies, trying to get recruited by cults.
Thank God you got married to your wife.
And she made me stop when they were calling.
It was that time when he was in the mosque and they were going to throw him off the top of the building.
No, but I had a rabbi used to come to my house and we would have breakfast. And then one day he saw my roommate was an Egyptian Christian, the Coptic Christian, and he saw the crucifix and he goes, "Are you Jewish?" I said, "No." And then he just packed up. I said, "We've been talking for like a couple of weeks, and we were talking. I bought a book, the Kabbalah from him, and the Kabbalah is mysticism. And he was telling me you could release your astral self and time travel and stuff. And I said, well, since this is the last time we're going to talk, I'm going to tell you that the Kabbalah doesn't work. And he goes, well, how do you know? I said, because if it did work, I would release my spirit, travel back in time, show up right now, and tell myself that it works. I've not yet materialized. And he just shook his head and left. And that was the end of my dinner with Moish.
They did make fun of this whole theory in The Mummy when Imhotep came back, and then I forget the guy.
He had everything around his neck. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, Keely, how you doing? Good to see you. Good to see you. The Star of David is a cool symbol, but I don't think it has the same significance as a cross. Well, that was what Matthias was making a point in his book. Like, again, if I was to pick up a Star of David, a vampire's eating my face. You know what I mean? But if I was to pick up the Crescent Muslim, the vampire's eating my face. You have to. It has to be a focus for your beliefs.
Well, we're talking about werewolves and vampires and so forth.
Oh yeah, with Keely, we're talking about werewolves versus vampires in honor of Halloween. So we're going through vampire lore. So the commonalities of vampires. Let me focus this now. Vampires, for the most part, of course, there's exceptions to every rule, like Dracula being the most notable one, and Edward, that vampires avoid light.
Correct.
Right? Vampires need James, you said human blood. Now, could vampires exist on cow blood?
Yeah, I would think so because it's warm-blooded.
And like, because Anne Rice for a while.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I can see that. There's talk about both. So I usually stick with on mine. They can feed, but once they feed, they can go for a very long time without feeding again. It's not like a daily thing.
Yeah, I that's part of my own personal headcanon is vampire. If they have to feed and kill every day, there's no way. There's no way. Like to me, it's like Galactus. Like Galactus doesn't constantly need a planet. Galactus only needs to feed after he exerts himself, which to me begs the question: what is Galactus doing that he's exerting himself? Which implies, Reed Richards saved Galactus, that Galactus is doing something important in the universe that we don't understand yet. Maybe Reed Richards did, but anyway, that has nothing to do with vampires. Yeah. Actually, Galactus is the biggest vampire because he eats entire planets instead of just humans. But anyway, to me, if vampires could eat cows, in this modern world, why would they go after humans? Why not just become cattle ranchers and sell the meat, become butchers and,
Well, I think what it is the human blood sustains better, and it's like the main thing they need. But in a situation where you're desperate and you're fixing to die, then a cow's blood could take over. But I'm saying for what they really need is the human blood.
See, I am of the opinion that part of vampirism is it has to be cannibalism. Like cow blood wouldn't sustain a vampire.
Why not pig's blood then? They're more closer to a human physiology.
Right. Or like could a vampire eat a chimpanzee and survive?
Well, we'll have to ask your vampire.
Yeah, we got to ask. Anybody know of any vampires? All right, so vampires eat blood. They're dead. Now, here's another question. Okay, Yang got attacked by a vampire and he's now a vampire. Is it Yang or is it a vampire?
It's Yang. He keeps his personality.
You think
it's
so?
Yang the vampire.
Yeah. That's the way I do it. Is they keep their personality and they keep their thing. But also, if they're just attacked by a vampire, they don't become a vampire.
Right.
If they're just bitten, then they're going to be getting sick, possibly turning into a ghoul, and so forth. It's once they're fed vampiric blood after being bitten, that's when it takes over.
Right.
If you're dead, though, you don't have a soul. I think that's the kicker. Like, if you're a vampire, I don't see how you're the same person. Are you snarky before and after? Maybe, but are you the same person? You've been dead.
If I turn into vampire, I want to turn into George Hamilton.
I think vampires become more. It's sort of like if you see people like going into Hollywood, and then at first, usually they're kind of humble because they have to live in the real world. But once they get super rich, like all the different elements of their personality become more. Like if they're generous, they become super generous. If they're annoying, they become extra annoying, extra rude because no one's going to correct them. And if you look at vampires, like they're all very flamboyant, they're extra, and they all end up being sex perverts in the end, which is exactly it's like vampires in ditty parties are like the same thing.
Maybe
parties, it's basically like Pamela Anderson or Marilyn Monroe when they first show up.
Yeah,
they're this wholesome, beautiful, and then as they go through, they become this sex symbol model. They completely change.
Well, look at Eddie Vedder. If you look at the first Pearl Jam album, Eddie Vedder's like, "Hey, it's so cool that I'm in a band. It's great." And then 6 albums later, he's like, "Man, you just don't understand." Yeah.
It sounds like Comicsgate, yeah. Start out crowdfunding the comic, and like John or James here, Fabrizio, and then you work on it. You get good. You sell a few. You get a few. The second comic. By the third one, you're like, I don't want to hear it, and you're 2 years late on the book.
Oh man,
yeah. I'm showing DMs from all you guys.
Yeah,
that's right, and that's why I watch all this stuff.
Logic is right. Logic. We're just trying to establish a common ground here. Like there's 5 people on this panel. If all 5 of us were to write a vampire story, there'd be 5 different rules. Like I think it's obvious to say if you're going to make a magic-based system. Like Tolkien was pretty consistent with his magic within his books, but his magic system is completely different than D&D or anything like that. So, I think we could all agree, as long as you're internally consistent with your logic about the vampires. So, like I'm fishing because I have an idea for vampires, but I have to break what I think would be my own rules in order to make this story, because vampires have to be. They have to feed on human flesh, because if a vampire could feed on cow, I think logically, if they just want to survive, that's what they would do, unless they just want to be evil. So like that's the fundamental thing about vampires. Is it like they're evil spirits? Are they devil? Like are they just part of nature? And to me, that's what I have to work out to make my story make sense. So what do you guys think? Since I brought this up, do vampires necessarily have to be evil?
No.
Yes.
Yes.
No, I'll say this as somebody who has written stories about vampires and done certain things. You get the way I did it was it's a contract, and once you have the contract done, and this is how my main vampire becomes a vampire, and this is how Dracula in my story becomes a vampire. There's 2 different vampires. When I created mine, I had on the board up here, I said, my main vampire cannot be Dracula. That was the number one thing I said. He cannot become a vampire like Dracula did. He can't be. I have to come up with something brand new. So what I did was the person's mentality, how the person was. When they become a vampire, it trails over. If you look at Dracula, he's self-loathing, he's self-centered, he's self-arrogant. Everything is about self. It's about himself. When you look at Von Confin, which is my vampire, it's sacrificial. I've got to save everybody. I need the power. And then it goes horribly wrong. That's the difference between the two. So that's the way I did it.
Okay. Yang's got to leave. So anything you want to say before you leave, Yang?
Well, I'm just going to say I'm team werewolf. I think that a vampire would probably would win in a fight.
Okay,
but,
so
werewolves are a much better creature, and they're very underutilized because they're about man's struggle with innate nature. And are you going to devolve back into a wild animal, or what keeps us above the werewolf? And every month they transform, right? So it's like we will at times revert back, but to me that's a more interesting story because again, it's that versus sex perverts. So
yeah, I mean,
I go with werewolves.
I love werewolves as well. So
I like what Zach-Tan said. I never thought about this, where vampire is corrupted society and a werewolf is corrupted nature. That is actually really, really
that's really good.
Cool. I never thought of that. That is Zach-Tan.
So then what's Frankenstein?
Yeah,
corrupted science.
Because think about all the weaknesses of vampires: religion.
I watch Project X.
Thresholds. They have to sleep in a confined space. Dirt of their homeland. This is all societal, and then werewolves is just I'm gonna go nuts and kill my friends and run around in the woods.
Well, there's a lot of tales of werewolves, depending on where you're at. So, on that, again, depends on how you write them.
Did you read The Light at the end of the tunnel? I don't know what that is, Oscar. Is that a comic? Is that a novel?
I think it's a threat.
The BBC made a vampire miniseries in 1980 called Ultraviolet. Silver work, daylight work, nothing else. They cast no images. Okay, that's as long as you're consistent. Werewolves are protective warriors. Okay. Yeah, that sounds like a religious thing.
You're talking about a series for vampires. I'll tell you another one. Kindred. When Kindred came out in I think '98, it was based on. Remember, it was based on Masquerade.
Yeah, it was based on what was it? Why can't I think of that company?
Vampire the Masquerade by White Wolf.
Yeah.
And,
that was good. I remember wanting to watch it. It was like off the air before I got. Same with Constantine. I never got to watch it. It was canceled.
I've got it actually on VHS, but it was really good. It explained the hierarchy that Masquerade had.
I guess we're at the werewolf portion. So
okay, let's do that.
So what are werewolves? Yang, you have to go. You want to tell us about werewolves?
Werewolves are fantastic. Like I mentioned before,
their castle.
So were meant human, right? So it's in a lot of ways an examination of people's more bestial nature, and it is often like the wild, untamed beast versus civilized society as well. It just manifests in a whole lot of murder and gore. Werewolves are unable to, they have to be locked down and put away. Just like some might say criminals, murderers are like that. We have to lock them up and throw away the key because they can't control their bestial rage and that nature. So there's a lot of society versus nature as well. And it's interesting that, a lot of this sort of comes up in Gothic stories, same time as the vampire, because the vampire, they're able to avoid Victorian Moors, right? So again, sex perverts, but they're able to do things, say things and act in certain manners that go against Victorian normatives. And you have like a same thing with werewolves, but it's more like on the peasant end. where you're starting to see a more industrialized world, and people are becoming more integrated via, first with railroads and then with telephones, telegraphs, and you see stories more about werewolves popping up then, because can they exist in this new world? Will our innate nature eventually win out and cause us to destroy what we love? In a lot of werewolf stories, you often have them they end up killing their family, not by choice, but they just can't control themselves. Yeah. So that's kind of.
It seems like werewolves and vampires. It always seems like werewolf represents like total unrestrained, and vampires always seem like a little like they do whatever they want, but they're in control. Like, so they are like just like. I don't want to say restraint because it's giving away the wrong word, but like,
reasoning and calculated. That's what vampires are. Whereas werewolves are just totally random, murder whoever comes across your path.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Manipulative, calculating. I like that for vampires. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, James. I'm sorry.
The best way I put it is real simple. A vampire is like Emperor Palpatine. He's there. He's playing in the shadows. He's controlling everything, and he's in control of everything. He's manipulating everything around him. He's very arrogant. He's very snobbish, but he keeps out of sight. Werewolves are like the Harley Davidson Hells Angels. They're packs. They don't give a shit. They're going to run around. They're going to slaughter. They're going to wipe out. They're going to, they're not going to hold back. So you have a complete opposite of a coin. You have the sly, calculated monster that hides in the shadows, and you have the pack that are wild. They don't care. They'll cause chaos and everything in the kitchen sink.
So Logic wants to know, let's address the 800-pound gorilla. What do you guys think about the vampires and werewolves in the show True Blood? Well, I never watched it, so I don't know.
No, I haven't watched it.
Me neither.
I haven't watched it either.
I saw it.
What do you think?
I basically will watch anything with a vampire. So I've watched the worst versions of things and the best versions of things. I think True Blood had some good elements, but it wasn't the vampire aspect of it. It was some of the setting and atmosphere and things like that. But as far as sort of like the creature mythology, again, it was pretty tame to some degree. I don't know. It was okay, I guess. It seemed like more of a satire than anything most of the time.
Yeah, it didn't look like it was a monster movie. It looked like a romance show that pretended to be a monster. So I don't know. My sister loved it, but so that made me like, it's not what I want. Again, I want. It seemed to be popular around the same time that like Twilight and the Anne Rice books, if I remember correct, and it just seemed like it was like the romantic, beautiful part of vampire. And I want monsters to be monsters.
It got pretty gory at certain points. At certain points, yeah. I don't think it was as tame as Twilight, but I don't think it was as intense as we would expect.
Yeah, it was all like boobs and blood, from what I remember.
A lot of that, yeah.
Maybe I should watch it.
I'm gonna watch it.
There's some things I'm
not sold too easy.
You can't scrub out of your brain, so I will.
Now I will say this: a lot of aspects that I use comes from like Underworld and World of the Apocalypse, which I know John knows about that book.
Yeah.
And
I like the Underworld movies. I mean, first off, Kate Beckinsale in skin tight leather. Ain't nothing wrong with that.
You should get him on, the creator of the Underworld. I bet you talk to you.
Oh, I've talked to him before. He's a fantastic guy.
He's a roommate, old college roommates with one of my best friends, and he's been trying to get him on my channel for a while.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
But he's like, you can't yell at him for creating the Blue Marvel. I'm like, damn it.
No, you can't. Also, he'll be scared of him.
We all make mistakes. We all make mistakes. So, but the thing I liked about the werewolf for the
Kevin Grievous
Apocalypse was the tribal aspects of the werewolves. I like them when they're in a groups. I like to keep my werewolves in a group. Oh, bye. But I like my werewolves smart. I don't think just because they're transformed they lose their thinking and they're cunning. Because wolves are cunning. They work in packs. They hunt. They know leadership, everything like that. So that's the way I keep them. That's why I give them the edge against a vampire.
Okay, so let's talk about what are the common attributes of werewolves.
Common attributes that I see of werewolves is one, the younger ones have rage that just completely takes over when full moon comes out and they're forced to shift. The older ones, the elders and stuff, they can do it. They can shift whenever they want to.
So I would say that rage is because of the pain of transformation.
Yeah, I think it's that way. I don't. For me, I go with some of the Greek mythology, where a werewolf is born as a werewolf, and if they're attacked, it's because they survived an attack, and then the pack will hunt them down anyway and try to kill them anyway.
Okay.
So if there's a rogue one, they're running for their lives.
Fabrizio, anything you want to say about werewolves?
I mean, all of the werewolves that I can think of, whether it was that TV show with werewolf, it just Yang Man sound very cool, and I give him more credit than I have in the past. I have to admit, but I'd say the one commonality is that it's hairy Hulk basically. Once they Hulk out, I don't see how they keep their wits about them, and outside of the animal instincts of a pack, maybe like a vague goal, like kill these people or this, but I have a hard time imagining them as like a
so werewolves. We all agree they transform.
Right.
They're tied to darkness and the moon. The animal-like bestiality, not bestiality, bestiality. They're bestial. And they attack. Do werewolves need to eat humans, or could werewolves just eat anything?
No, they can eat regularly. They don't need to eat humans.
Yeah. I would.
They attack. They attack to kill.
One at a time. One at a time.
So you could just feed them steaks, and they'd be happy. We put them on the carnivore diet.
But would they want a cooked steak? They would want a raw, bloody steak. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
like if you look at The Howling, okay, I'm going to mention one of the greatest werewolf movies ever made, The Howling. When the husband gets marked, okay, what's the first thing he changes on doing? He changes how he eats. Remember, he used to be kind of a vegetarian. Now he's eating meat.
That movie,
the meat's real raw.
I'll watch it again.
Yeah, he does that. He goes to eating more raw meat and everything. But that's
that they hunt because they like to hunt, not because they hunt. So, do you think a werewolf would just by nature just track something down, kill it, and not necessarily eat it?
Yeah, I think that's the way I look at them. I don't see them hunting down a human specifically. If they're going to hunt, they're going to hunt because they'll hunt deer down to hit other creatures down for that. But if they're going after a human, it's to they see them as a threat into their territory and they're going to take them out.
So okay, so what the vampire's common weaknesses was daylight, the cross, even fire. So the biggest one was silver.
So
my resident werewolf expert Brian Bow, who does Wolf and Batsy.
Where is Bow? That was my question.
Yeah,
this is his topic.
Yeah.
He was saying that Hollywood invented the weakness to silver, that it was in the old werewolf movie. I'll take him. I challenged him once on Monster Lore. He handed me my butt. So
yeah,
I don't know about
I have
that.
No idea. So
for me, it's silver. But if you got like a blessed blade or something that's been blessed, like a sword or something, and you decapitate a werewolf, he ain't getting up.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like a holy weapon. I think that would, for me personally, in my writings, if a werewolf gets hit by one of those,
we just talk about common mythology.
Well, I think even back then also, because remember they couldn't go on the holy ground also.
Was that part? I don't remember. Yeah,
I do like Zactan. Werewolves are kind of amoral destruction that way. That's
right.
That's definitely how I see it.
Like you said, they're a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, Hulk.
It's more of a primal. It's that primal urges that people have.
Matt, the link is right here. Matt, come on in, Matt. The link is right here.
Yeah, come in, man.
Come in. The werewolf's fine. So, I know. I had a lot more to say, but Zach.
No, I'm looking this up about the silver bullet, and that came out
I was saying silver. I didn't say silver bullet.
James, let him talk.
It came out in a book in the 18th or 19th, The Beast of Gavaudan, an 18th century wolf or wolf-like creature shot by a silver bullet. It appears to have been introduced into novelists retelling the story from 1935 onwards, but not earlier versions. So it did come out much earlier and then brought back. But it was still pretty much right before the movies.
Okay.
So
thought the connection with silver versus
I thought I saw something about that earlier.
Yeah, Brian. Yeah, Brian should be. I invited him. You like the werewolf changing voluntary or just by the full moon?
Full moon. I mean, if they're voluntary, are they a werewolf? At that point, they're just superpowered. All right.
Right. I agree.
Then they're a straight superhero. It's got to be a curse. To me, the werewolf is a curse. The vampire really isn't like you're turned into a vampire and you have no choice. It's like more like a disease.
Yeah.
Whereas a werewolf is a curse. You're cursed. It's been cursed. And there's werewolves all through history and all the various mythologies, and it's always a curse. And it was, and especially in Europe when people were getting rabies, they thought they were turning them into werewolves. But it's the curse of the full moon. You don't know what you're going to do. It's like Larry Talbot. He doesn't know what he does. He wakes up, what's going on, and 3 people are dead, and he killed them because he was the werewolf.
Right.
And that is the Hulk. It's the Hulk with the Frankenstein crossed with the Wolfman. Very obviously, especially early on. So that has to be a curse, and a curse that you're always trying to find a solution for. There isn't a solution most of the time, and it ends in tragedy.
I agree. I always got my werewolf stuff from the movies and old black and white Universal Monster stuff. It wasn't until I started playing the White Wolf games before I got caught up in other werewolf
aspects,
like the you could voluntarily change, and then that got me into reading like in ancient Greece, legendarily, whether they were a real tribe of people or not, but they would hunt wolves and wear the wolf skins and just wear that as like a totem, like a total Stone Age or Neolithic society, that they would just scare people. You know what I mean? Wearing wolf outfits. And then
there's also 2 mythologies in Greek of werewolves. One is a curse by Zeus.
Right. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. The actual, like, maybe
one of their children.
So then they had the Viking berserkers that would, wear bear outfits and take drugs. And, so there was a lot of this like animal transformation. So,
well, let me ask this, because this is one of those things that always kind of bothered me, is the volume. Like, as a person, say I'm on 5'6", right? If I turned into a werewolf, I feel like I should still say the same volume of human. The fact that some werewolves get bigger,
right,
is strange. It's always struck me as strange.
I think that's an artistic thing. Like if you looked at like Werewolf by Night, that's the one when Mike Plug did not draw the werewolf that much bigger than Jack Russell.
He was just hairier, and
he was just big, hairy werewolf, and people were super afraid of him. But I think as they gotten like more exciting and more art, it's just like when the Hulk started.
Yeah,
he was barely over 6. He's a nice short squat. He looked like a wrestler. He looked like Bruno Sammartino.
We're talking about a short squat wrestler guy. Here's Mike Farrell.
That bar is little.
Bring him back when sounds like.
And then same thing with the Thing. Like I'm just using it in the comic terms. Like when the Thing started, early Fantastic Four, he was not taller,
right,
than Reed Richards. He was just incredibly strong. And then as they started drawing him in a different art form, he got bigger and bigger. Now he's this gigantic character. He wasn't that much bigger than I am.
I get that. Yeah,
so it's kind of the same thing.
Well, to answer Fabrizio's question, it's an extra dimensional mass that they draw upon, right? Isn't that what it says in the Marvel universe, where the Hulk?
That's right. That's absolutely true.
Well, I think where it came from werewolves is where the transformations changed was when the movies started getting better with their special effects.
Right.
And
right.
Up until I'm going to say this, up until
what happened to
the American Werewolf in London and The Howling, which came out in the same year, you had the Universal version of the Wolfman. They didn't go full wolf head. They didn't go full snout. They didn't go taller or wider or bigger.
They just did makeup.
And so I think when they moved that up just to make them scarier.
Right.
You know,
we got better with special effects. I mean,
that's what I'm saying. I think that's where it came from. It's just
remember
it's just
how
artistic.
cool it was to watch American Werewolf in London for the first time and see that practical transformation. That was a phenomenon. That movie was a legit phenomenon.
I was like I think I was like 12 or 13 when those two movies came out, and I saw both of them.
Yeah.
And the one now for me, I always liked the Werewolves in The Howling better. But, you know, Baker designed both werewolf suits, so that's just, you know, he did fantastic on both.
In
But
Mexico are Naguals or Skinwalkers, men with whom transform.
Yeah, I hadn't brought that up yet. But for me, watching those two movies, they really, you know, that was when the werewolves really became the monsters.
All right. Oh, Zach Cam brings up another thing I wanted to address. One of the things that stops the spread of lycanthropy is that werewolves tend to kill their victims pretty thoroughly. Underworld, I think, had werewolves that could come back from the dead. I don't remember that, but I'm not going to argue.
No, Underworld, if a werewolf died, they didn't come back.
Right. I remember American Werewolf in London, to me, was the first time I saw like I always thought like Marcus said, like lycanthropy was like almost like rabies or whatever. But American Werewolf in London, remember Jack was undead because he couldn't pass on until the werewolf died, and he was getting more and more decayed. I love that scene. He's eating toast and you can see it going down his throat. You know, so the special effects were in that movie were outstanding.
Oh, I mean, that's why it won the Oscar. It was so good.
You know, I always thought werewolves were like an aberration of, hate to say it, they were like the Elephant Man. They were just an aberration of the physical world. That was the first time they became like supernatural.
Yeah. But like I said, after that movie, that's when they started doing stuff.
So I wanted to point out what Fabrizio said about the mask. If anybody read the original Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, when Dr. Jekyll took his formula, hey, see if Matt's coming back. It looks like he had some technical difficulties. How you doing, Matt? Everything
What's
okay?
up?
Hey, Matt.
Hey, Matt.
What's going on, guys?
So, Matt, we're talking about werewolves and vampires, and
I know.
I was just going to bring up Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I'll finish this point, and then you say.
Yeah. I'm jumping in. Sure. Keep going.
So, Dr. Jekyll, if you read the book, which I thought was a terrifying book, and I'm not claiming to be a genius, but I remember talking with my college professor, and he was like, "You got it." Dr. Jekyll took this formula, and he shrank. He actually got smaller, and I don't think he necessarily got hairier. It's just that he had the same amount of hair over less mass, and he got denser, and he got horribly deformed from, I think, this compression. And he became like stronger. Just think of like a 6'2" guy compressed down to like 4'8". You're like Wolverine now. Everybody forgets Wolverine's tiny and tough. And he went around, and I hate to say it,
it's like dwarf strength.
Yeah, Dr. Jekyll, in my mind, knew exactly what he was doing. He created his own alibi so he could go bypass his Victorian society and act upon these horrific sexual urges that he had. He was a monster before he became Mr. Hyde. And then later on, he became this gigantic Hulk, like in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. But like what Fabrizio said, the mask that these werewolves get, that's just an invitation, a creation of it becoming a visual medium rather than, So what do you think? We talked about vampires. Matt, do you have anything you want to say about vampires? And we're in the midst of our werewolf.
It's 2024. There's so many different variations of the vampire.
That's exactly.
It's just like, well, which one? What kind are you talking about? Right. I don't know. In my head, I have like my own canon of the older they get, the more fucked up they look. Like the Barlow kind.
Who's Barlow?
Barlow from Salem's Lot.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? Where it's like, yeah, like maybe you have like 1,000 years of like looking like, Robert Pattinson with your diamond skin or Dracula good look, but eventually you start to like go feral or something. I don't know. Who knows?
Nosferatu.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
or Nosferatu. It's like,
if they don't drink blood for a long period of time, their bodies are going to wither up and just look, grotesque and everything.
Yeah,
It's-
but also the movie John Carpenter's Vampires.
That was a good movie.
You know, that was
With James Wood?
I enjoyed that. Yeah, James Wood in his one and only action movie. I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think vampires are interesting, but I'm also like, I'll always be vampire hunter. You know what I mean? Like I'll always like want to stake one. I never want to be one.
Okay. So, all right. So we pretty much talked about all the vampires. So now, taking Dracula aside and taking Fenrir, the agent of destruction of Norse mythology, that like in the White Wolf, he was the father of all the vampire werewolves and blah blah blah. So we're talking typical werewolf fighting typical vampire. Do you even have to come up with a scenario? All you really got to do is put them in vicinity of each other. It's like two magnets. You know, they're gonna fight. So Marcus, do you want to?
Well, is Abbott and Costello there? Because that really
Yeah, Abbott Costello. Right, Abbott and Costello are
Abbott.
trying to. I
That
picture them like
movie-
trying to
that
open up
movie
a
is
safe or
great.
something like
Let's
that.
just be clear. That movie is great. I love that movie.
It's better than it.
Yeah.
It's better than it should be. You know.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I
Scooby
think,
Doo is there. Yeah. What?
I think that the vampire wins, but Nosferatu or Dracula, especially in a one-on-one. And you know, and that's the king. You know, the vampire is just a smarter individual. He could turn into a bat and fly away for the most, fly circles around and turn into mist and not be touched. And the werewolf is a brutal brawler, you know, and and is not thinking. You know, he wants to take the arm and rip it off and beat him with the arm. But so I think just on brains alone and, you know, able to, you know, avoid the wild swings of the werewolf, the vampire wins. And when I say vampire, I always think of Dracula, because that's just the first one that comes to the head. And usually, like some people said in the chat, that werewolves are pets of the vampire lots of times. Mm. So I think that, like, you know, the werewolf's just about a dog at that point. So I think the vampire wins.
Ouch, that was some serious shade to the werewolves there.
Well, it depends. I mean, I'm thinking, like, I drew a werewolf and it was gigantic one time for a poster for a guy, and it was this gigantic werewolf and this girl. And I'm thinking of just like Werewolf by Night side, like regular Larry Talbot werewolf. No, I'm not thinking like these werewolves that Dale Keown draws, right? Because we're thinking the werewolf that Dale Keown draws. I mean, that werewolf's just taking the Thing's arm off and beating him with it. I mean, you know,
I agree. I was just messing around. I totally agree.
Yeah, I feel like Dale Keown draws the werewolves from The Howling.
I think you're right.
Oh,
and that's not a bad thing. I'm just saying, like, it seems
I've actually got pictures of the werewolves they used in The Howling that they've got set on stage. So in other words, they're not the suit, but it's the actual full size werewolf. That Baker made. I've got pictures of those. Let me see if I can find them real quick.
They got a new action figure coming out too. Like they got
It's like, you know, it's not the werewolf from the Wraith of God 1. I mean, that's like this massive, superpowered werewolf. When I'm thinking this, I'm thinking the traditional kind of Universal movies guys. You know what I'm saying?
Werewolf in London vampire werewolf, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I could be swayed, but that's my first thing.
Fabrizio, what do you think?
I mean, I completely agree. I mean, the vampire is going to outthink him. He could set traps. He could set, you know, like you said, he could just avoid him, like the werewolf, until the werewolf is vulnerable, and then take him out. You know.
Yeah, I got the two versions of it. Sorry.
Nice.
So
I think.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead, Fabrizio. It's your turn.
No, I agree. I mean, I don't know how you get around the fact that werewolves are going to be vulnerable outside of whenever the moon is not out. And vampires are around every single night to trap, track, and kill the people that are going to be the werewolves.
Matt, you got anything to say about, we're talking about the actual combat between a vampire and a werewolf?
Yeah, I think Marcus and Nas are both nailing it. I mean...
Matt, by the way, this is Fabrizio. He's just putting up
How's it going?
Fabrizio, what's up?
He does a Horace H. Hoover, that comic. And
like
And
I think werewolves are super cool, but once you come down to combat, you're dealing with somebody who is immortal. So combat skills and like I don't know, vampire kung fu, right? Right? You know, it's like okay, like they have like super claws, they got super speed, and they're super smart. So you have that. So just in the scene, you're already dealing with, you know, a guy who's pretty formidable. But then also you add in the fact that once the moon goes down, this guy can like keep coming for you, you know. So for what 30 days of the month, you're fucking terrified and you're running, you know, you're scared that this fucking vampire is going to find you until you can turn into a werewolf again. So yeah, you're fucked.
so we got
The best thing you do is be like, just be a pet. You know what I mean? Just like
we got three team werewolf. James, what do you think? I mean, 3 team vampires. Excuse me.
On a straight up fight, a werewolf or a vampire 1-on-1, it's gonna be the vampire. Vampire keeps the smarts and everything.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with that.
I guess I'm the outlier.
Now I'm gonna say this: if I do it with what I have created, and it's a vampire versus werewolf, and it's just one vampire is screwed, because I don't send my werewolves in one at a time. I send them in packs of 6 to 10.
Yeah, well,
So there's no chance
I could have 100,000 zombies versus a vampire, and then the 100. You know what I mean? We're talking 1-on-1.
And I don't think a werewolf would be able to catch a vampire off guard. Like I'm going, what if like the vampire is just like sitting there, not fucking with anything, and then the werewolf just like starts mauling them. Even then, I just think the vampire's got heightened senses. He's like smelling the werewolf on the way. It's just fucking. It's like you're dealing with the ultimate predator versus, you know, like the ultimate beast. You know, it's.
But this is the design from the Howling.
So
this
dope.
is the werewolf from the Howling.
That looks like Wolf from Wolf and Batsy.
But that is the actual costume.
That is cool.
I know. I saw that. I was like, oh man.
She's not Batsy though.
No, but
No,
that's actual real werewolf.
Like
She was murdered like 8 seconds after the picture was taken.
Yeah, but I do like it. The only thing I didn't like about the costume is his feet are really small.
They were drawn.
Yeah, I would have liked to see him like quadrupeding a little bit, because he does just kind of like turns into this giant skinny thing. I would have liked to see that. I liked Wolfen. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, Wolfen was good. I saw that in the movie theater too. I guess I'm the outlier. I think on a 1-on-1 fight, like I just picture like you said, sense, like a werewolf. It's got to have animalistic senses. It could smell the vampire. You know, it's got these and I just feel like once it digs in, it's like what is the vampire going to do? Like, you know, is it super strong? You know, and I'm talking average vampire versus average werewolf. I'm not talking Dracula. That's a whole nother, you know, thing. But I just feel like a bestial werewolf. It's like, all my, you know, like what Mike Tyson says, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face. Like, yeah, the vampire's smarter, but what are you going to do when, you know, I'm smarter than a dog. I'm smarter than a pit bull, you know, but a pit bull's going to maul me in a fight, you know?
Well, it's like that scene from Underworld at the beginning of the movie, where they in the train, you know, where he gets up and transforms into a werewolf, and the vampire standing there, and he just gets his face ripped off.
Who would win between a feminine werewolf and a gay vampire?
The
The furries.
Yeah, I'm going furries.
And then could a vampire be awake during the day? Yeah, I mean, we could exploit their weakness. You know, the vampire could wait. I'm just talking about a fight right there. You know, that's always like, what if we change the rules, or what if we come up with a plan? You know, I mean, I'm just talking about it. All out
the werewolf, because like a lichen is fucking. I don't know. I think a lichen could take a vampire, like in that world. Like the vampires definitely need weapons in that world, like you know.
In Underworld, I agree with you on that. In Underworld, the vampires are at a disadvantage.
Yeah, that's
Underworld,
why as soon as they made the lichens, they like chained them up and shit and started putting stuff on them to like keep them in control.
I,
Joe.
I don't know. It's just like, of course, to me, out of all of these, it's Clobbering Times we ever did. This is the one with the most arguments because this is the most variables because no two people have the same concept of vampires, no two people have the same concept of werewolves, and But
I guess you have to set it up where it's
right,
like,
you have
okay,
to set it up, but even then,
like Lestat versus Teen Wolf.
Oh,
you know what I'm saying? Like we have to pick two specific werewolves.
Yeah.
Michael J. Fox, Teen Wolf, or
yeah,
Kirk Douglas.
Yeah, I don't know any other Teen Wolf. I only know the Michael J.
We had
Fox
a TV show, I think. After.
Oh, Jason Bateman. He played him in the sequel.
Yeah, the sequel was good. He was boxer, which is weird because you think a werewolf would just knock somebody's damn head off.
He was a boxer.
Yeah, right. And Wolf 2.
I might as well ask you this, and I'll save you for a little bit later, James, because you actually have books about werewolves and vampires. But Matt, we'll start with you. If you were to make a comic or a book or whatever, I assume a comic about werewolves and vampires, what internal rules and logic would you use?
I do have a werewolf story. I got conceptual artwork. I'm kind of helping somebody that's an actual writer is helping me in the themes of it. But it's about an older man. I don't know where he got his lycanthropy, but during the moon he goes to an island, like a couple of sheep. So he goes to the island to transform, eats the sheep, whatever, and then gets back on the boat and comes back to the village. So I almost feel like the village kind of knows about him, but they don't really, they leave him be. So this island that he wolfs out on it gets used as a film location for a survival show. So you have these 12, 15 people all filming themselves, hoping to win a survival sponsorship. One of them become the next Bear Grylls. And they don't realize that this old man has been using this island for 40 years. So the whole story is just that one night. So the old man shows up, he releases the sheep. He walks to a clearing. There's Celtic stones in a circle, but they're so worn that you can't tell what they are. And he takes his clothes off, smokes his pipe, and as he's about to change, he hears a tree snap behind him, and he turns around, and it's one of the fucking survivors with their camera. So they're like, "Yo, what the fuck are you doing here, old man?" And he's like, "Wait, what are you doing here?" And then the change happens, and then the rest of the story happens. So my store, I kind of keep my stuff loose. I'm just thinking this guy is just American Werewolf in London.
It's almost like blacking out. He'll
yeah.
Right.
He knows that it's bad, but he has to go here.
He doesn't want to kill himself either.
He doesn't want to kill himself. He doesn't want to kill anybody else. So he goes here to this island to wolf out. Now, is there a way to maybe hold back the transformation? I was thinking he had a wolf belt that he wore or something, but he would eventually have to go back to the island. He may be able to hold off a transformation for one or two cycles, but he would have to go to the island. That was something that I was playing with.
I'm just picking your brain for the internal logic. If he held back, would that make it that much worse when he finally did transform?
I think it would make it worse, but it would also start to bleed out in his daily life.
Yeah, he would.
You know what I mean? He'd start to be more shitty, more aggressive, more
vulnerable to silver.
I don't know. I'm thinking no. I'm thinking body damage is body damage. You shoot him with a shotgun. It's.
Okay.
He's not gonna
Could he infect other people? Could one of these survivors?
Yeah, he could. Yeah. That was, and that's some of the end. Some of the end is some of the survivors are alive. The old man is alive on the beach. Turned back. There's dead people everywhere. He's fucking mortified. And the thing with survivor shows, they all give them those hey, here's your satellite phone. Right. So imagine half the satellite phones start turning on, and those people are oh yeah, well, let's send a crew out to the island. So the crew of this boat shows up, and of course they're flashlighting and looking around, and then they get eaten. but he's pretty much bipedal. Like I went and saw American Werewolf in London in the movie theater as a kid, and it just fucking rocked me. It melted my brain.
Yeah.
And that's my werewolf. Like I love the recent Wolfman Benicio del Toro a little bit, but
he's one of the few people who doesn't need too much makeup to play a werewolf.
Yeah,
I'm sure he'd be happy to hear that.
but that's kind of my take. It's pretty simple. It's
Fabrizio,
I'm sure James has like a much bigger, deeper like use of them. Sounds like.
Do you have any like internal, like what would you do if you're making a werewolf or a vampire story?
I mean, that is the next story I'm doing after.
Oh, okay.
We're all working on werewolves.
I know. But I would say it's not. Is there a new take on this stuff? I don't know, but I'm trying to do something new. I would say, as far as werewolves and vampires, they sort of stick to the traditional weaknesses. I mean, to me, a combination of Dracula and Nosferatu is a vampire, and like I said, for me, the Wolfman's a little simplified, but the same silver bullet, all that kind of stuff. So,
Marcus, I thought you were done.
it.
Marcus, you have any werewolf?
Well, I was thinking you would know your dinner guest is a werewolf if they insist on plastic sporks and food, plastic dinnerware.
No garlic.
Where?
We'll get a pizza, no garlic. Marcus is a vampire, ladies.
That's a vampire, no garlic. That's right.
Well, James, I know you got vampires. Well, so
yeah, my graphic novel is Vampires and Werewolves, which is like I said, Don that draws is doing all the coloring, so hopefully it'll be done pretty soon. I've got 3 novels out of Vampires and Werewolves that have been out. I've sold 85,000 copies combined sales, but I took mine. For me, the werewolf is the Howling.
Okay.
I mean, that's my favorite werewolf.
So yeah,
I love the Howling. Yes, American Werewolf in London, Marcus. I'm going to go with you. That great movie, fantastic movie.
So maybe Rick you can tell Fabrizio where the mask comes from.
Well, you got Rick Baker, who did both. He started on the Howling, and he left it to his assistant, and then he went over and he did, American Werewolf in London. So he did. I mean, he's got his hands in both movies. That's why the werewolves in both movies are so good. But for me, I've always looked at the werewolf as more of a creature of nature. And what I did with my werewolves is my werewolves come directly from the Greek mythology of one of the children of Hades and Persephone. And any werewolf that comes out from that line is born a werewolf. That means they don't have a choice.
Okay.
And anybody that's attacked by a werewolf and survives becomes a werewolf, but is hunted by werewolves. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Anytime a werewolf attacks a person, it's a hit. They're going to die. If somehow they survive, they're still going to be hunted by the other werewolves. All the werewolves hunt in packs. They always hunt in packs. They never go solo. And that's the way I did it, because wolves are pack animals. They don't go solo. And that's why I put that in like that. And silver bullets, silver swords, blessed swords, so like that can hurt them. Werewolves are strong. Their bites, and in my book, I actually have it where one of my werewolves rips a guy's face clean off. That's just
a werewolf thing to do.
Yeah,
it's almost like if you don't have that, you're not writing a werewolf book.
Like that. And for me, when it comes to a vampire, they go through another. I had to come up with something completely different with, Dracula's Dracula, and I didn't want to be carbon copy of Dracula. So when
if you're gonna write a vampire book, it's almost like, dude, stay away from Dracula.
You know? And when I created Von Confrin, I had to come up with something completely different. And Von Confrin, the way he becomes a vampire is the complete opposite of Dracula. Dracula does it because he's upset. Everything's self. It's, I'm going to get this. I'm going to get revenge on this. He's never doing it for his people, never doing anything like that. Mine made a blood oath to his brother. He's dying. He asked for one last shot and he's hurt and he gets it. The only problem is it all goes terribly wrong for him.
Okay.
So he's stuck around, but he's still. The reason that keeps him going is the promise he made to his brother when he died, because he's a count. He's not the ruler. He's the younger brother, and that's where he comes in, and that's the big difference between him and Dracula.
Zach Tan asked, who would win, a vampire or poltergeist from the Final Girl board game? We'll find out. I can't beat that poltergeist scenario. I just can't beat it. It's too tough. And I'll try the vampire scenario one of these days. I've been asking a lot of this because I want to do like a cowboy versus vampires story, and I'm kind of obsessed with the idea of like, I know we're talking about monsters and superheroes, but I always try to make it like logical. And I'm thinking vampires, like, because in the last couple of Anne Rice books, they were getting together talking about how tough it is to be a vampire these days with forensic science, and they're tracking down, like, the jig is almost up. They're saying to each other, like, there's only a matter of time before the humans are a real threat to us. So I was thinking, like, what if in vampire time and the Wild West times, a group of vampires we just want to stay alive. Like, we're not evil. We're not just like blah 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 blah. We're afflicted with some sort of syndrome, and we need blood. So they become cattle ranchers. I'm trying to marry this idea of like, do vampires need human blood or just any blood? So these cattle ranching vampires, they get caught up by somebody who's like, they're vampires, like almost like the vampires aren't really the bad guys. They're just like, we kill we kill the cattle, we sell the meat, you know what I mean? But other people like, but they're vampires, they must be eradicated, kind of thing. So, but one of the things I'm also working on is, like, I'm trying to marry the idea, because to me, a vampire is a horrible monster. Like I was asking before, like, you're dead, your spirit is gone, your soul has passed on, you were killed, you were murdered or whatever, and now this spirit, this demonic entity, is now pretending to be Fabrizio. It's pretending to be Marcus. It has access to your brain because it has access to this, provided your brain wasn't destroyed. It could pretend to be Matt Barr. It could pretend to be Mark, but it's not. And it uses that to trick other family members for free. So I'm trying to, like, I have these two, like, we're just peaceful hippie vampires, man. And then I have these demonic I'm trying to come up with a story that works both of these things together, because I don't know, I'm big into continuity.
Here's an idea for you on that, because I do this in my book. If a vampire does not feed on human blood, their body starts going into what's known as torpor.
Yeah, that's
okay. You remember that from Vampire the Masquerade. But what I did was, and this happens in my book, there's a vampire that's chained up that hasn't fed in 500 years. So they're a rotting husk. They're in full torpor. Their body is a full rotting husk. And what I mean by that is, if you remember the old Hammer films, when they're bringing back Dracula, they put blood in his mouth and stuff like that, and his body starts to regenerate.
Right. They did the same thing to the ancient vampire in the underworld.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So that's what I would say. That's what happens to a vampire who doesn't get human blood. They can still live on cattle blood, but to keep their appearance and everything, they have to have the human blood.
See, the reason why I'm having such because I have these two different vampire stories, and I kind of want to marry them. In one vampire story, it's set now, and the name of the story is called Sundown, and it's about a girl. It's inspired by that song's Sundown by what's his name? Now it's gonna bother me. Same guy who sings that song, Wreck of the. He just died. Whatever, the folk singer from Canada, Market, whatever he is.
Gordon Lightfoot.
Gordon Lightfoot. It's inspired by the Gordon.
I'm like Gordon Lightfoot.
Yeah, So anyway, Sundown is this beautiful girl. She's a mortician, and the opening scene is she's taking care. She's brushing the hair of a corpse, and she's putting the corpse like this, and it turns out that that's her vampire master, and what her job is to get it blood because it needs human blood. It's literally a corpse during the day, and during the day, it goes through rigor mortis, it goes through 12 hours of decay, and then the human blood causes it to become fresh again. And the longer it goes without blood, the more that body decays to a point where that body is useless. But these vampires are spirits. So during the daylight, unbeknownst to sundown, that her mistress is in another body someplace where the world is dark. So say China. You know what I mean? So these vampires have more than, or what they're doing is constantly traveling around wherever it's dark. So they'll wake up now, spend a couple hours here, go back. They're constantly avoiding daylight. But during the daylight hours, their bodies are decay. And if they spend too much time over there in Fabrizio's body, Marcus's body will decay because it is dead.
I could use a little decaying though.
Yeah, so there you go.
A little big. I could use a little weight.
I could probably marry the two stories together in the fact that, yes, they'll stay alive if they feed on cow blood, but it won't stave off the decay. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like it's a premise thing. So if the premise is kind of vampirism really is a disease, then it's more of like a biological thing, and cow's blood is sufficient. If it's more of it sounds like a spiritual thing or a supernatural thing, then it does seem like a person, like their life essence. It's not just the literal molecules that you're taking.
What does High Lord Zart say? I did not like the true blood, but one good at drinking any blood outside of human blood will keep you alive for a bit, but it slows you down. It's like living off of only powdered milk. Yeah. Like, no offense to any vegans out there, but when was the last time you saw a vegan with like healthy teeth and non-pallid skin? Like, okay, you're not going to eat any meat and stuff. You're going to, your farts smell like death.
I don't think that the vegans aren't buying Heroic Tales now. Jesus.
Yeah, you just totally
Mom, that crowd out.
Got rid of about 4 people in your
Hey, Matt, great page in Heroic Tales.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yes,
I got it.
Yeah, that was great.
Matt, you probably don't know, but Fabrizio he did another advertisement.
Yeah, Fabrizio. I mean, the comic. I'm breaking. The comic fits so well as exactly what John wanted. The Silver Age comic, and I've seen some of the art, and Renzo with John spoiling everything. But you know what really brought it together for me? Not just the coloring is really good, the lettering. Bill Williams did such a good lettering. Oh my gosh, I'm like, they should just him and Eric Weathers is a really good letterer too. But I like Bill Williams. Oh, I'm like, you need a letterer. Call this guy up, man.
Oh, Bill Williams.
Everything was placed. It looked so clean.
His lettering is outstanding.
I was just reading Fiendish, and I wish Bill Williams lettered it. So
yeah, it's funny that you said that, Marcus, because
I hear you on that one.
Getting art pages
thank you, man.
is cool. Getting colored pages is even cooler. But when I saw pages that were actually lettered, this is a comic book now.
I mean, it was exactly like Joe Rosen did it, or Artie Simek.
Unless you send out a page and with a pre-lettered page. So this page actually doesn't have the lettering. I messed up.
I'm one who believes that lettering should fit the art. So that's not a crack on other people's lettering, but it fits this project perfectly. Like if you letter yourself, like I've done that. I don't like to do it because I can't letter that well. But if, let's say, Fabrizio, you letter your own stuff, but it fits your comic, it's just as good. But for what John wanted, that like late 60s Silver Agey look, that lettering was terrific.
Well, Fabrizio lettered his own page. It looks phenomenal.
I know he did.
Yeah.
But it fits it. Yeah, the whole package is just terrific. And so I think you should overprint and then do a catch-up, because I think what's going to happen is number 2 is going to push sales to number 1.
Matt, did you see this? Here's another ad in the book.
I saw that one too.
Ooh.
But I do want to really read it, because reading it again on the screen is cool, but I end up going too fast.
I know.
It takes me a long time to read a comic.
When I read the digital proof, I didn't notice all the mistakes and things like that.
Yeah.
I got a physical proof.
Well, anyway, I didn't mean to say break you out, but it just, I was a bit on my mind. I had the Fiendish books and I didn't read them. I flipped through them, but I finally sat down and read one of them, and I loved it. It's a great story, but the lettering was so small. And then I said, I hope number 2 is bigger, and the number 2 is smaller. I know you don't want to cover the art, but the lettering is part of the art. That's part of the design of the page. I mean, that's how we go through it. And sometimes I forget, and then people are covering up my work, and I learned a lesson every single time that happens. I don't leave enough room sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, if it comes down to that, I get rid of words. I mean, I'll rewrite as
Well,
lettering.
It's my writer will write. He
I
letters.
I know.
He lettered better in the late '90s than he is now, but that's a whole other issue. But that's fine. I'm not a critic. It is what it is.
I'm just looking at your ad,
about it.
Fabrizio. I can't help but smile every time I see it.
James, do you letter your book, or do you have somebody letter it?
I have somebody lettering it.
Who's doing your lettering?
Don.
Okay. Yeah, Don's a great guy.
Yeah, Don will do a good job, I'm sure.
Listen, he's doing the interior coloring and he's doing the lettering. So he's done. I've seen pages already, so it looks really good.
He's a good colorist too.
When I asked Matt to do this spoof on sea monkeys,
I
was just like, okay, they're going to be called sea hippies, and I think I said one line, and Matt was like, okay, I'm real busy right now. I'll get to, and then Matt was done. And it was awesome.
I got a question for you, Matt.
I'm so glad I didn't interfere. This is so much funnier than I would have thought of.
Matt, do you know who did the original Sea Monkeys ad?
Yes, I do.
I'm sure you do, right?
Yes, I do, Mr. Joe Orlando.
Orlando.
You had him too, right?
Yeah, I
think
Joe.
We went almost exactly 10 years in between. I'm about 10 years older than you.
That's hilarious.
I
got to watch Joe just be like, what the hell is going on? Like, people were bringing in like Dragon Ball Z stuff to class, and he was just like, what the fuck?
So I had a friend of mine, and we were doing that. He had that thing where you only did black and white. No, like you had to do karaoke from one light source, and you had to pick out
what does karaoke mean?
And what's 3 seconds before and 3 seconds after. That was a standing thing. And this kid, Delphin Barrel, who is a professional artist, cartoonist, and worked on Wendy Peeney's books for her back in the early 2000s. So he comes in. This is before anybody thought of using Sharpies, and he did all this manga-inspired artwork in the late 80s, and he drew the whole thing in Sharpies. And Joe picked it up and said, "Hey, use real art tools." And I never forgot that. Poor Delph. He's like all embarrassed. Like, dip it in ink. Use real art tools, because Sharpies weren't real art tools. He was all angry.
You know what I told him? I told him, go tell that to Scott Williams, who did X-Men.
Yeah, but this is way before Scott Williams.
1980s?
1987. So.
Oh, okay. I thought you said it was 2000s.
No. Well, Delphin worked in the 2000s, but I went to school in the late 80s.
Well, I mean, I was in school in the late 80s too. So, but when you were talking about that, I said I had heard that before, but I was thinking that was like mid 80s, early 80s.
It was so funny.
And then you said that, I was like, are we talking the 2000s or are we talking back then?
Well, so I knew Matt knew that.
Yeah, that was so dope. It's like, what? It was like he did it over like a day or two. Like, it wasn't even like that big of a deal. It was just commercial art.
Oh yeah.
Need some sea monkey artwork. Let's make it happen. Go.
Did anybody ever order sea monkeys? Did anybody get?
Yes.
Oh, James, you did. Okay, so what did you get? Tell us what you got.
Didn't look nothing like the. I'll tell you this. Didn't look nothing like the freaking.
Aren't they just psychos?
They were just pink crap stuff that you put in water, and they just. I mean, it wasn't worth a darn.
It was brine shrimp. You got dehydrated eggs. You put them in the water, and brine shrimp came out, and your whole house stunk.
Yeah, it was so bad. Oh my god, it was so bad.
None of
them got zygotes. They had
or a bow,
and the things were so scary looking, and they lived for a couple of weeks too. It was pretty gross.
Yeah. Did anybody order anything in any ads? I always wanted to get the submarine.
What did I order?
I wanted to get the submarine. I was a stupid kid thinking it was going to be like a big plastic submarine. It was a cardboard box.
I ordered the Army soldiers. I ordered the Army soldiers, and they actually showed up as the little green soldiers that you got at the store.
No, I ordered the Army soldiers, and they came up as little plastic things on a stand, like you had a Monopoly thing. And it was drawn by Russ Heath. You thought it was just. And I ordered a Thor pillow. I don't know why, but I had a Thor pillow from that Marvel before they became Heroes World, Marvel superhero merchandise.
And it was a plastic sticky pillow, right?
Yeah, it was cool. I don't know what happened to it all. I mean, I don't have it anymore.
Yeah.
All right, I gotta get going.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks.
Vampires. Go vampires. I'll talk to you
So
guys later.
I'm the one outlier that says werewolves. I was going to ask one
Okay.
more monster question. What would you categorize Frankenstein's monster as?
A golem.
Yeah. Okay. I thought that was going to stump some people, but yeah, he's a golem.
Hulk is a golem. Thing is a golem.
Now, here's my question though. So, because some people will say that Frankenstein's monster is a zombie, but
he's not really a zombie because scientists took the. I just watched Bride of Frankenstein yesterday, by the way, on TCM, and they took parts of people and put them together and reanimated it with electricity. That's not a zombie.
Right. The difference between Frankenstein and everything, I believe what makes Frankenstein is he has his own soul.
He does.
What do you think? You're the horror guy, James. What do you think?
I'm fixing to throw something right out the window here on this one because you're not going to believe this.
Okay.
But the beautiful lady that played Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein,
Elsa Winchester. Elsa.
She was married to the gentleman who did the talking version of The Hunchback of Notre Dame, who played the Hunchback. That was her husband. And she also was the elderly lady of the group that was the pain in the butts in Mary Poppins.
Oh.
The redheaded lady that was kind of overweight. Yeah, that was her. What I think Frankenstein is, I'm going to go with a golem base, but it's a scare on how far science could go.
Oh,
right.
Well, it's the first science fiction novel, right?
Yeah, it's classified. That's what science fiction.
Considered, right?
It is straight up.
I tried to read these books.
We're moving into better.
Yeah, dude, I can't read that Baroque shit, dude.
It is hard. Dracula, I got about halfway through.
Dracula
Really
is a tough read, man. But I'll say Frankenstein is a page turner.
I still have it here.
Dracula is.
I tried to read Frankenstein. That was a little easier.
Yeah, Dracula was boring as shit.
Three-quarters of
Dracula is, if you go an original copy of Dracula, it's the only way I can get through Dracula, and this is honest truth, is I've got an audio book by Christopher Lee.
I could see
that's the only way I can get through it. I mean, I actually have a copy of it on the shelf over here, but I'm just sitting here going like, oh my God, oh, you got to be kidding me.
I think I got that page 265. I couldn't finish.
I mean, I finished it, but I mean, it is such, like I said, I had to go to the audio book to hear somebody read it to me. I just could not. But Mary, her Frankenstein is a great book. It's a beautifully written book. I mean, hats off to her. I really, the whole thing is the monster is more humane than the creator is.
Right.
And that's what really gets you. And
well, the monster's a monster who, in my opinion, he develops his humanity later. You know,
yeah, I think so.
If Victor had just said, I love you, or I accept you, or oh, cool, I create the problem solved, end of book, boring book. But Frankenstein was repulsed by it. Because remember, Victor went and killed Elizabeth. I mean, the creature went and killed Elizabeth. It didn't have to do. He was an evil, but then later he developed humanity. And
everything he did to Victor was revenge.
Right. So I mean, like I would think that if, like I can't think of the exact movie, but there's a Frankenstein. You saw over time he healed. You know, he was getting more and more human. Has anybody seen Penny Dreadful?
Yeah. I saw Penny Dreadful. That was a scary ass fucking Frankenstein. I prefer the smarter Frankenstein. You know what I mean? Like over time, he gets smarter and smarter the older he gets.
Well, but
at first he's like, "Oh, what the fuck?" But then by like year 200, he's like, "Hello, doctor."
Yeah, I like how they did it in I, Frankenstein. You know, now he's smart. He's bringing the doctor and everything like that, and he's understanding what he did, and he's looking for repentance.
That's what happened in Bride of Frankenstein. I mean, he got smarter. He used more words by the end.
Right.
You know,
in the book, if you remember,
he's pretty.
He taught himself to read by observing a family. He taught himself. You know, he was super smart. He just was a dummy at first, like anybody who's just born.
Now in Young
That- it's just the
Frankenstein,
monster- yeah.
unfortunately got Abby normal brain. So
Yeah, the monster
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah,
take
well,
responsibility for his accident.
that's Frankenstein.
that's right. Oh, R.I.P. Terry Garr.
Igor.
Oh, yes.
I love that movie, Young
Yeah,
Frank.
Terry Garr. Also,
Terry
I got to do a shout out to
Forrest Leachman.
Greg Hildebrandt, who passed away yesterday.
Yeah, R.I.P.
I mean, that's a heavy loss. You know, some of us still have that Star Wars poster.
Mm-hmm.
No.
I remember all his cards.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But no, I mean, and the thing about it is when you look at Frankenstein and you look at Dracula, you look at Hunchback, you look at all these characters that were made way back, they were so good that are still here today and are still being remade and reused. That's what's so important.
Right, yeah. Zach then always has a good perspective. Yeah. The problem with the Frankenstein was the child was rejected by its father, and again, had the father accepted it would have been a 3-page book or whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, the creature, as he called himself, Adam, that was, that's what he named himself, Adam Frankenstein. He wasn't innocent either. He knew exactly what he was doing when he went and he killed Elizabeth. Like he told him, he goes, I'm going to be there on your wedding day. And, so he knew he was doing something wrong. He knew.
Well, he wanted revenge.
Right. So he wasn't, he was a monster too. I have no problem saying that he was bad. I think, but
he was bad. He killed a few people. He was bad.
Right. He also developed a conscience and pretty much went to Antarctica to kill himself. Like he realized I was wrong. I shouldn't be here. I did the wrong thing. Like, I think like that's what they experimented with in that show, Penny Dreadful, is if you remember, he started out as a monster and was killing people. And then towards the end, he's in the ocean, almost like he's baptized and born again. And he becomes human and he goes back to his wife, but the girl Frankenstein, she the one played by Billie Piper.
Yeah.
I don't think she got to that point. And I don't think she would have got to that point. I think she was just like reveling in the hedonism and the nastiness that like this process created. But anyway, I was just curious what you guys thought of Frankenstein, because that's a whole nother.
Oh, I
Some
love
wild shit when
Frankenstein.
he just like ripped that new one in half.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, Jack.
I mean, Frankenstein is just it's a creature. It was so well put together that you just want to use it. You love the character. You can make him as evil as hell, or you can make him somewhat good. There's so much things you can do with the version of it. And the thing about it is since it's free source, just like Dracula's free source, you can do what you need to with him.
All right. Well, this has been going on for almost 2 hours now. I'm going to shut it down. But before we do, all right. So we everybody seemed to be vampires, Team Vampire. I was the only werewolf guy. That's because Brian wasn't here. But what about next week? What's a good? It's clobbering time.
I'm not going to be able to make it next week. I have a prior engagement I have to go to.
But anybody chat? Anybody? Matt, what do you think? What would
I'll
be
be
a
here.
good? I came up with all the ones that I was interested in. I'm kind of hoping the chat has a good one for next week.
Let's see. Let's see if I can look something up.
I'll draw a quick werewolf.
What about Black Cat versus Catwoman?
Did we do that?
No, we didn't do that one yet. That one comes up every week. I don't know.
I thought we did that for a second.
Oh, I got one for you guys. How about Sergeant Rock and Easy Company versus Team 7?
Oh, I don't know enough about Team 7. What do you guys think of the chat? More monsters or heroes, whatever,
Gollum versus the Hulk. You could go back
Which
into
Gollum? Are
history.
you talking about the one that's in Lord of the Rings?
No, I'm talking about the Jewish
Oh,
big, strong
the
savior.
Polish Golem.
Yeah.
Ooh, that'd be good.
Hulk wins.
Yeah.
Well, Hulk's the stronger Hulk gets it.
Yeah.
Or the Thing, maybe the Thing doesn't get it. Well, they all lift 85 tons.
Matt, you got any good verses in
Fudge. I'm brain farting. I'm sitting here trying to draw a werewolf real quick.
Oscar pushing this.
Oscar's usually the best one at it.
Moon Knight versus
We did Moon Knight versus
Hawkeye.
Daredevil. Right?
Oh, you already had Moon Knight? Duh. That's why he's on my brain. Sorry. I'm retarded.
Oscar sent me this. What do you guys think? He's been pushing
nice
Hawkman versus Archangel for a long time.
I think all right, that's fine. I like Hawkman. I drew a nice Hawkman.
All right, and we already got the picture.
I'll link it. I
right.
did it for AJ Tom.
We'll do this Hawkman versus Archangel for next week. Oscar's been pushing for it. All right, so there we go.
Which Hawkman? Which Angel?
Although Darkwing Duck versus Scrooge McDuck would be.
No, that's not bad.
Well, how about Scrooge McDuck versus Lex Luthor? Who's richer?
Scrooge.
All right, so there we go.
Yeah, women in it.
Hope everybody had a happy Halloween. Sunday, I'm going to do Sunday comics, and then I go back to work on Monday, so I kind of haven't been
for real
scheduled. Yeah, I'm going back on Monday.
Where are they going to put you? Do you know?
Same job that I left because I already had all the passes. You know, I got all through the.
Well,
FBI
be careful, man. You haven't worked out that hard.
I know.
I know your job's real physical.
That's why I.
Yeah.
That's why I haven't really been scheduling a lot because I don't know how beat up I'm going to be after work. So I'm going to next week. I'm playing it by ear. So thanks a lot, everybody. Check out the Steins. Marcus, you want to shout out anything you're working on?
I'm working on stuff for Mythic Americas. Inuits, which are all splash pages. I guess that's going to be 8 pages, but it's a slow burn. With that, my writer just had cervical surgery, so so that's kind of tough. I'll link it here. I can link the page, and you guys can read the first 2. They call it a graphic novel of 8 pages. So and you guys can read that stuff if you like. I didn't letter it. I'm not taking any credit for that because it's not lettered any good. But I hope you'll like the drawings, all black and
Matt,
white.
You got anything you want to promote? You want to say?
No, I think we're gonna be doing Lord Raptor later on, and other than that, I'm working on Rock and Roll Ninja Part 2, and working on something with you this weekend.
Yep. Okay.
I got one thing. One thing before we go. Many of you may not know that Jim Pagliano and Amanda Connors, who are good friends with Billy Tucci and myself and everybody like that, their business Forefront, where they do their comic books and everything, got hit by the hurricane, and they took a lot of damage. It's pretty bad. They do have insurance, but their deductible is pretty high. So they're doing a sale of comics, independent comics, the one that they're working with Billy Tucci on, and artwork to help pay that deductible. The website is paperfilms.com. Go over there, support them, give them some love. Like I said, they got books, artwork. They're doing it on sale. So go over there and give them some love because they really do need it, and they're good people.
All right. See you guys.
For sure.
All right, thank you. I'll look into that.